You all mentioned the prevalence of gun violence in this country. There's only so much you all can do in the minority. The majority you all passed assault weapons ban, but that did not pass in the Senate. There's been a lot of things that you all want to do or saying you'd like to do. What can you do in the minority? Is it taking a discharge petition, for example? And if so, what specifically could that look like? And could you get Republican support?
Well, first, we want to tell the people of Nashville, the first thing we can do is tell the people of Nashville that we need to do better. But we're with them and we're thinking about them. That's the first thing that we need to do. But from our public policy hat, as you mentioned, we passed the assault weapons ban here last year. We also passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which the leader Jeffries has said is a floor. It's not a ceiling. Investing resources into states, making sure that more extensive background checks for individuals under the age of 21. Those are good things that we were able to agree on. But clearly, there is more that can be done. I personally and many members of our caucus believe that the assault weapons ban would be the reasonable place to take action. We are not closing any door on any process or any legislation that will help communities, that will ensure the safety of Jennifer's kids coming home from school. Three of us up here, Seth has a baby and is going to be thinking through this in the next few years. But the rest of us have kids who were school age kids going to public schools. That's the mindset we think about this in, is how do we ensure our kids' safety? This is a fact that whether it's Maxwell Frost, coming to Congress, talking about gun violence, talking about how Newtown shaped him into public service. This is a generation that is more likely to spend time doing mass shooting drills than they are undertaking in other activities, and it's deeply unfortunate. And as a country and as a Congress, we can do better, and we know that. So shame on Speaker McCarthy for not bringing something up, for not announcing that we can do more. All we're going to get are thoughts and prayers out of their Twitter accounts, and that's not enough.
If I can follow up, Republicans this morning have been saying they would like to address this through mental health legislation. They haven't proposed anything, it seems like, or talking about necessarily, but what would you all ideally like to see on the mental health front that you could actually join with Republicans?
The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act put, I think, $500 million into mental health into our states. That's a good place to start. Again, as Leader Jeffries has said, that's a floor. It's not a ceiling. If they want to invest in mental health, that's great. What they can also do is they can pass a budget. They can work with us on funding government that will actually put those dollars out on the street, out into the states, so the states can effectuate that change. But they haven't proposed that, and they still have significant challenges in passing a budget. So I would encourage them to do that, and I'll yield to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. So in answer to your questions, Republican from Tennessee, Tim Burchett, was recently asked about gun violence and what they're going to do to address it. And he said, quote, "We're not going to fix it." So House Republicans are not going to fix the problem of school shootings. Democrats have passed laws and will continue to do that to address school shootings and other gun violence, such as universal background checks. And in terms of the two parties, we're just not the same on this issue. At the same time, what we're seeing are Republicans trying to deal with issues that do nothing to protect kids in schools, right? You had in Florida a principal that was fired because they showed Michelangelo's masterpiece, David, to some students. You also had a sort of in Florida, what they're doing is students who feel uncomfortable can object to certain courses. And so a professor had to not teach a civil rights course because a student felt uncomfortable about the discussion of civil rights. Well, parents have the right to have their kids learn about art. They have the right to have their kids learn about civil rights. They have the right to have their kids learn about historical figures like Rosa Parks. None of that killed anyone or killed any kids. What kills kids are AR-15s.
Yeah, I'll just echo the point that Chair Aguilar made on the debt ceiling, which is that whether we pay our bills as a country, as we have for over 200 years, is a completely different conversation than what our budget priorities should be going forward. The paying of our bills, keeping our obligations as a nation must be non-negotiable, as it has been for hundreds of years. However, we can have a debate, we can have a negotiation about what our revenue and our spending should look like going forward. But in any debate, in any negotiation, the first step is the two sides show their plans. President Biden came out with his plan weeks ago. We are still waiting for the Republican plan. And so for them to be asking for a negotiation when they haven't even presented their opening position is just theatrics. Show us the plan and then we can negotiate. Gun violence, I don't know how much more I can add beyond the eloquent words of the chair and the vice chair, but I can tell you that in the Democratic caucus, there is a lot of energy to do something. And so, again, every avenue, every procedural avenue, I think is still on the table. And our hope is that we can find even just a handful of reasonable Republicans who are willing to stand up for their constituents instead of the gun companies. And it all comes back to money, right? Just like in the Polluters Over People Act, the Republicans who took more than $20 million from the oil and gas companies are putting oil and gas profits ahead of energy consumers and environmental protection. It is not a coincidence that the gun industry is pumping money into the campaign accounts of many of our Republican colleagues, and all that they can offer in the face of tragedy is, a tweet with thoughts and prayers and not real action. Not a coincidence. So.
I want to reiterate that we can and we should walk and chew gum at the same time. We have to address the mental health crisis in this country. We have to address the gun violence crisis in this country. And we have to understand that they're linked. Every time there is a shooting, my son cries about going to school because he's afraid, is he going to come back? Is his sister going to come back? These active shooter drills that we put our children through traumatizes them because they often can't tell the difference between a drill and the real thing. That exacerbates a mental health crisis that was worsened during COVID. We have got to recognize that weapons of war are too prevalent in our streets. A child in my son's class killed himself accidentally using a gun as a prop in a video. Why wasn't that gun secured? We should be investing in making sure that there are gun safes and gun locks. We should be investing in addressing the root causes of gun crimes in our communities. That's what we need to do, and not choose between addressing mental health and addressing gun violence. We have to do both.
Last question. Despite all these concerns, you still have millions of students, teachers, administrators who have said time and time again they are scared of what's going to happen if their school is going to be the next one. You had House Republican leaders this morning still saying the same point that they brought up before, but the priority is not to politicize the issue and not to punish law-abiding citizens. What are your guys' response when this is the same response that Republicans come with almost every time that not just a school shooting happens, but a mass shooting happens?
Look, I think it was 2012 was Newtown, right? I mean, anytime kids get gunned down in schools, it's tragic, it's terrible. That was really the point, I think, for a lot of us, where it was, if Congress is going to act, this is it. And the fact that they couldn't, the fact that the talking points Republicans use today are exactly the same that they used in December of 2012. It's alarming. It's disappointing. It's just sad. And that's just who the Republican Party is today. And, we can't shed a tear about it. We've just got to do better and do more. And I think that's what you see the Democratic caucus want to do. We want to lead on these efforts. We did in the last Congress. We know that we can in the future. We want to use every procedural, possible tool we can. Every way we'll send a letter. We'll do a petition. We'll do whatever we need to do in order to help. One, crystallize it for the American people, because ultimately House Republicans answer to the American people. That's an audience that we can speak to. I think tomorrow you'll see Whip Clark lead an effort of moms, congressional moms, who are fed up and want to take action, and they will be joined by many of us who are parents and who want to help. And so that's what more we can do. But we can't just be frustrated by this. We've got to take action, and that's what House Democrats want to do. Thank you.